Joining me now is a member of Congress who's very focused on this, Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Let's talk about Facebook. I want to dive in on that because you had a very contentious back and forth in April with Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg when he testified before your committee. And after that, you tweeted, quote, "Sorry doesn't cut it anymore." Given this new development, do you believe Facebook is doing enough right now to safeguard our democracy and our elections?
Yeah, Facebook was in denial. It's clear they did not accept their responsibility to ensure that they dealt with the downside of the internet. They were constantly touting all the good things that happened. But there's a Dickensian quality to the internet. It's the best of wires and the worst of wires simultaneously. Now, to their credit, Facebook is dedicating resources to ferret out those who are trying to subvert our election process. And that's to their credit. But it also is a warning to our country that, in the words of the 1960s movie, the Russians are coming again for our elections. And that we have to be vigilant, but that has to start in the White House with the President of the United States stopping his denial of the reality that this is happening.
So in April, when Mark Zuckerberg did testify before your committee and you had this back and forth, you've talked about the Consent Act, which you introduced earlier this year. That is legislation that, if passed, would require companies like Facebook to get an opt-in from all of us that use it, that we would have to opt in for our private information to be used, not opt out of certain things, not set certain privacies. We would have to opt in, and that's really different. And you pushed him on that, and then he conceded to you that, yes, he thinks that is, quote, the right principle. Do you think that Facebook, with all of this investment, the hiring of 20,000 additional people, taking a big hit to their profit and their stock price as a result to fight this, is doing enough now, or should they do more?
No, there's a lot more to be done, especially on the privacy of individuals. In the Consent Act, we say basically you have a right to know that information is being gathered about you. You have, secondly, a right to know that that information might be used for purposes that you did not intend. And third, you have an absolute right to say, no, you do not want this information to be shared. That has not happened yet. There is no law that is on the books, and Facebook hasn't stepped up yet to advocate for such a law to be given as a privacy bill of rights to every single American in this era. So we're still at the dawn of this debate. His hearing back in the spring kind of triggered this national discussion, but we're still very far from having the laws be put on the books that in fact reflect the concern that every American has about their private information. And by the way, that's reflected in the decline of Facebook stock.
To be clear here, do you think, though, that Facebook is making quite a lot of sacrifices to try to make things right? And I ask you that because we saw last week the stock fell, it plummeted. After you heard Mark Zuckerberg say on the investor call, we're investing so much in security that it will significantly impact our profitability, making all these hires. It sounds to me like you're saying it's good they're doing that, but they also have to do more than money can do and hiring can do, and that is get behind legislation like this. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Their business model actually included a premise that they would not invest in privacy and they would not invest in security to the extent which they should have. That, in fact, allowed their profits to be higher. Now they're beginning a process of making that investment, but they need to make the whole platform more secure to give people confidence that they can put their private information online, secure that it will not be compromised. And they also have to make the investment, which they've begun to do, to put in the protections against compromise of our entire internet system in the country from invasion by the Russians or others that seek to, through this technology, to compromise our democracy, to insinuate itself into our electoral process.
The Vice President, Mike Pence, speaking in New York yesterday, pointed his finger back at the Obama administration and said that that administration failed to do enough to fend off attacks and cybersecurity attacks. Let's listen.
The last administration all but neglected cybersecurity, even though the digital threats were growing more numerous and more dangerous by the day. In 2014, a foreign government actually hacked into the White House network itself. And yet, in the face of constant attacks like that, the last administration too often chose silence and paralysis over strength and action.
Should the Obama administration have done more, Senator?
Well, that's just absolutely untrue. I was the author of the law in 2010 to mandate dramatic increase in the security of the electric grid inside of the United States. I was able to get that passed through the House of Representatives. It was killed over here in the Senate, which is where I now serve, by Republican senators at the behest of the electric utility industry of the United States. I had President Obama's support for that legislation. It was Republican senators which killed it. Now we hear crocodile tears, or see crocodile tears being shed about their concern. Well, right now they have an ability in this administration to put out an across-the-board red alert that they expect every single industry to install the state-of-the-art protections against cyber attacks in our country. They have yet to do it. And so let's now no longer have words. Let's have some actions, because I know from my own personal experience that they killed my bill after it had already passed the House of Representatives. And the electric grid is the single most vulnerable, dangerous thing. And we know right now that China, that Russia, that other countries are probing our electric grid every single day. They still have not supported legislation that mandates the toughest possible security to be built around it.
Senator, on the issue that is top of mind for many people this week, and that is the ability to post online plans to print 3D guns. A federal judge has temporarily halted that late last night, but this fight is far from over. You have said that this would create a new supercharged era of gun violence. My colleague Lori Siegel sat down yesterday with a man named Cody Wilson. He's the one who brought the lawsuit forward and ultimately has settled with the State Department over this one that would have allowed these plans to be posted widely online. Here's what he said.
Are you worried that the government will reverse its decision?
Oh, like I told you, I already uploaded the plans. I mean, it's the ship has sailed. It's public domain information now. It's irrevocable. No one can take it back.
He says it's already up online. People are already printing this out. You can't turn the ship around now. What's your reaction to that?
That's not true. A federal judge in Washington has already issued a restraining order blocking any further downloading. What we need is for Donald Trump, once again, to match his words that he is concerned with some action. But we don't expect that to happen, because ultimately the NRA has this Republican-controlled Congress in a vise-like grip. After Parkland, we could pass no legislation. After this revelation about 3D guns being downloaded, we have crickets that we're hearing from the Republican side in terms of passing legislation to protect against their proliferation. These guns require no background checks. They're undetectable. They're untraceable. They're going to be a gift to every terrorist, every criminal in the United States, and by the way, around the world, because this is the internet. It is global, and this White House, beginning with Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Sessions, have given a green light to it, and Donald Trump is going along with it. He's got a chance to issue an executive order to just put an end to it, to just tell his own administration to reverse position. He has not done it yet. We just have to say to these people that we are not going to allow them to do it. We're at the dawn of the era. We just have to put the lid back on this Pandora's box and not allow it to become an epidemic on every single street in our country.
Senator Ed Markey, appreciate you being here this morning on both of these important issues.
Thank you.